I thought I was imagining it, but the dog really did knock on my front door, crying. That was the first thing I told the officer when he showed up after a call from a concerned neighbor. And believe me, I understood why someone would think I was the one who needed help after saying something like that. But I wasn't hallucinating. I wasn't dreaming. That dog, soaked from the sprinklers and dirt all over his scruffy tan and white coat, had really walked up my porch, whined, pawed at the door, and looked me in the eye with something that could only be described as pleading. He was a golden retriever. One of his floppy ears stood upright, while the other sagged, and his eyes were the softest, brownest things I'd ever seen. He had a collar, though it was frayed, and his tail was tucked so tightly between his legs you could hardly see it. When I opened the door, he didn't run. He didn't bark. He just lowered his head, whined again, and collapsed on my welcome mat like it was the first safe place he'd found in ages. I crouched down slowly, hands out, murmuring soft nothings, like I would to any scared animal. "Hey there, buddy. You okay? What happened to you?" I didn't expect him to respond, of course. But then something strange happened. He gave a soft bark, just once, and then tried to stand. I saw his left leg wobble under him, favoring his paw. He was limping, and there was a scrape near his shoulder that looked raw, like he'd been pushed or dragged through something rough. That's when I called animal services, but the wait time was almost 2 hours. So I called the local vet clinic instead. Turns out Dr. Lorna, who owned the small-town clinic 2 blocks away, was finishing up with her last appointment and said she could stop by on her way home. I got an old blanket and helped the poor dog inside, coaxing him with bits of shredded chicken from my leftover dinner. He took it gently, eyes never leaving mine. When Dr. Lorna arrived, she knelt beside him and examined the leg. No fractures, but he's definitely been through something. These scratches aren't from a fight. They look like he tried to crawl under something sharp, maybe a fence or storm grate. I asked, "Do you think he belongs to someone?" She looked at the worn collar. "He might have, but if he does, I'm not sure they deserve him back." We didn't find a chip, no tag either, just a faint name etched in marker on the collar that had half rubbed off. It looked like it once said, "Buddy." I didn't mean to adopt a dog that night. I'd just recently moved to the neighborhood myself. After my divorce, I settled in this sleepy Tennessee suburb looking for peace, quiet, and no responsibilities outside of tending my modest garden and fixing up the house. I wasn't in the mood for chaos, and I certainly didn't plan on suddenly having a guest with fur and a limp. But after that night, I didn't have the heart to turn him over to the shelter. He slept in the laundry room at first. I made him a bed from old towels, and he didn't move all night. In the morning, I found him sitting quietly by the back door, watching birds dance across my lawn. He didn't bark, he didn't whine. He just sat there, his injured leg pulled in tight, like he didn't want to bother anyone. That morning, I walked the neighborhood asking around. I figured maybe someone had lost him recently and he just got disoriented. But every door I knocked on had the same answer. No, they hadn't seen him before. No, they didn't know who he belonged to. Until I reached the third house from the corner. An older man, thinning hair and wearing a faded red shirt, answered the door. His eyes narrowed as soon as I mentioned the dog. "He finally ran off, huh? Good riddance. Little brat couldn't stop digging up my yard." I stared at him. "Wait, he was yours?" "My grandson brought him home 6 months ago. Said he found him behind the school dumpsters. Kid thought it was cute, but that mutt was a nuisance. Always running off. Jumped at everything. Wouldn't stop barking when someone raised their voice. Probably came from some messed up place, but not my problem." "What happened to your grandson?" "Went back to his mom's place last week. Took most his junk but left the dog behind. I told him if it was still here by Sunday, I'd call animal control myself. I walked away without saying another word. I didn't trust myself to. I was shaking with a kind of anger I hadn't felt in years. That poor thing had been abandoned more than once, scared for just playing, punished for being himself. And now he was knocking on doors, hoping someone would let him stay. That night I named him Buddy. In the days that followed, Buddy stayed close to me like I was the only person he trusted. He was quiet, gentle, always watching. He didn't play, at least not at first. If I rolled a tennis ball toward him, he'd look at it, then back at me, as if asking permission. Once, I saw him paw at an old rope toy I found in the garage. But the moment he noticed me watching, he dropped it and slinked away like he expected to be scolded. So I tried a different approach. I started tossing the ball when I wasn't looking at him. I'd roll it behind me, pretending I was distracted. He'd inch forward, sniff it, and sometimes bat it lightly with his paw. One day, he gave it a full push and wagged his tail. Just once, but it was a start. Every day was a little better. He walked with more confidence. He even barked once when the mailman came up the driveway. I almost cried. Then one morning, while I was sipping coffee on the porch, Buddy brought me the rope toy. He dropped it at my feet and looked up at me with those soft, brown eyes. He didn't whine, didn't bark. Just looked at me like he was asking a question. So I picked it up and tossed it. He sprinted after it, tail high, ears flapping wildly. When he grabbed it and ran back to me, I swear it was the first time I ever saw him smile. And that was the moment I realized he wasn't just asking for a home. He was asking for a second chance at being loved, and I planned to give it to him. That was just the beginning. Buddy liked the porch swing. It didn't matter if it was raining, windy, or blazing hot. If I was sitting on it, he was there, sometimes at my feet, sometimes with his chin resting on my knee. And every so often, he'd hop up beside me and doze off with his head pressed against my side. He still startled easily at sudden noises, and when thunder cracked one July afternoon, he scrambled under the porch and didn't come out until long after the storm passed. But little by little he was healing, and so was I. It had been years since I'd felt needed. Really needed. The kind of feeling that gets you out of bed in the morning, not out of habit, but because something or someone depends on you. The house was quieter before Buddy, and though I thought I'd enjoyed that quiet, I didn't realize how much I missed the gentle rhythm of another living being, the soft padding of paws, the sigh of contentment when the lights go out. My neighbors started noticing. Mrs. Whitaker from across the street waved more often, and one morning she came over with a loaf of banana bread. "He looks good," she said, nodding at Buddy, who was lounging on the porch with a rawhide bone between his paws. "He's getting there," I replied. "Still spooks when the garbage truck comes around, though." "My late husband used to say dogs know things before we do," she said thoughtfully. "Looks like that one picked the right house." I wasn't sure if Buddy had picked me, or if we just stumbled into each other's lives out of necessity, but the result was the same. He started following me around the house like a shadow. If I opened a drawer, he was there. If I turned on the faucet, he watched. If I stepped outside for even a minute, he was pressed up against the storm door, waiting. The first time I left him alone for more than 10 minutes, it was to pick up groceries. I thought he'd be fine. I even left a soft radio playing in the kitchen. But when I got home, the rug was bunched up, a lamp had tipped, and Buddy was cowering by the front door, tail between his legs. He hadn't done any real damage, but the look in his eyes told me enough. "You thought I left for good, huh?" I whispered, kneeling beside him. He buried his face against my chest. From then on, I brought him everywhere I could. The hardware store, the gas station, even the post office, where the clerk had a box of treats behind the counter. He never barked at strangers, but he always watched them with the same wary, quiet eyes. One Saturday, I took him to the park. It wasn't crowded, just a few kids playing frisbee and a couple jogging near the path. Buddy stayed close, sniffing trees and walking with a low tail. When we reached the fenced dog area, I hesitated. "You want to give it a shot?" I asked. He looked at me, then at the gate. I opened it slowly and stepped in. He followed. At first, he stayed by the fence, watching the other dogs tumble and chase each other like it was the best day of their lives. A golden retriever bounced over to him, tail wagging, but Buddy stiffened, lowered his head, and backed away. I kept my distance, letting him decide. Then a little beagle came over. Smaller, calmer. She sniffed him gently, then plopped down beside him like it was the most normal thing in the world. Buddy didn't run. He sat. Then, to my amazement, he licked her ear. That was our first breakthrough. We went back every few days. Buddy never ran with the big dogs, but he tolerated the small ones. He even sniffed a Labrador once, though he jumped back when it barked. Still, progress. At home, he started greeting me with soft wags and nose boops. He began exploring the yard more, chasing birds he had no chance of catching, and sunbathing on the back deck like he owned the place. I found myself buying toys, beds, and fancy treats I used to roll my eyes at in pet stores. Then came the day that changed everything. It was early August, hot and muggy. I was pulling weeds in the backyard while Buddy lounged under the oak tree. I heard a small voice from over the fence. "Hey, mister, that your dog?" I stood up and peeked over. A boy, maybe 10 years old, was leaning on the fence. Thin, messy hair, freckles. "Yep, his name's Buddy. He's cool. I saw him playing with a stick yesterday. He always looked that happy?" "Not always, but he is now." The boy grinned. "Wish I had a dog. My mom says we can't. Says dogs are messy and loud." I smiled. They can be, but they can also be the best friends you'll ever have. The next day, the boy came back, this time with a tennis ball. "Can I throw it to him?" "Only if you ask him first." The boy leaned over. "Hey, Buddy, you want to play?" To my surprise, Buddy trotted over, sniffed the ball, and gave a tentative wag. The boy tossed it gently, and Buddy fetched it, bringing it halfway back before dropping it and backing off. "He's not very good at fetch," the boy laughed. "Give him time. He's learning." Every few days, the boy returned. Sometimes he brought toys, sometimes treats, always asking first. Buddy grew more relaxed around him. It was the first time I'd seen him trust a child. I never asked the boy's name, and he never asked mine. It was just a quiet, simple friendship that bloomed over the fence. One afternoon, after playing, the boy sat down and sighed. "My dad left last year," he said, eyes on the grass. "Mom says it's just us now. I try to be good, but she's always tired. She yells a lot." I didn't say anything for a while. Then I said, "You know what helped me when someone I loved left? A dog." He looked up at me. "Yeah?" "Yeah. They don't care if you talk too much or too little. They just sit with you. That kind of quiet helps." Buddy wandered over then, nuzzled the boy's shoulder, and sat down beside him. The boy smiled. He does that thing with his eyes, like he understands. Maybe he does. That summer passed like a gentle breeze. Buddy kept growing bolder. He chased squirrels, barked at delivery trucks, and even snuck into my bed a few times when the mornings got cold. His limp faded, and the raw patch on his shoulder grew soft fur again. At the dog park, he played more. At home, he dozed with all 4 paws in the air, like he didn't have a care in the world. One day, the boy didn't show up. I waited all afternoon, then the next day, and the next. On the fourth day, I walked around the block and knocked on the house 2 doors down. A woman answered, looking tired. "Hi," I said. "Sorry to bother you. I'm your neighbor. I was just wondering if your son was okay. He used to visit Buddy over the fence." Her face softened. "Oh, yeah. He's with his grandparents for a while. Needed a change of scenery. I hope he's doing all right. Buddy's been looking for him." She smiled faintly. "Thanks for being kind to him. He talks about that dog all the time." I walked home with a strange heaviness in my chest. I looked at Buddy and said, "He'll be back." Buddy wagged his tail. Maybe he understood, or maybe he just knew I wasn't going anywhere. One afternoon, weeks later, I heard a voice at the fence again. "Hey, Buddy, miss me?" The way Buddy ran to that fence, tail wagging so fast his whole body shook, told me everything I needed to know. And we still had so much more ahead of us. It was during the first week of school that things began to shift again. The neighborhood got quieter in the mornings. Kids shuffled off with backpacks and sleepy eyes, and suddenly the street that had been full of summer noise turned calm again. Buddy noticed it too. Every morning, he sat by the back fence, ears perked, waiting. I knew who he was hoping to see. Sometimes I'd hear a school bus brake, squeal down the street, and Buddy would hop to his feet, tail twitching, only to lower it again after a few seconds. He never whined. He never barked. But the waiting became part of his routine, and it settled into mine too. I'd drink my coffee on the porch and glance toward the fence, almost as if I expected that boy to appear out of nowhere, holding a tennis ball. Then, one Friday afternoon, as I was sweeping the leaves off the porch, I saw a figure darting through the yard next door. A blur of backpack and sneakers. I barely had time to set down the broom before Buddy sprang from his place by the garden, bolted across the lawn, and nearly knocked over the fence in excitement. The boy had returned. He was taller. His freckles had faded a bit, or maybe the summer sun had darkened his skin. But it was him, and Buddy knew it without question. The boy tossed his backpack on the grass and crouched down, letting Buddy lick his hands and face while he laughed. "I missed you too," he whispered into Buddy's fur. I didn't interrupt them. That kind of reunion doesn't need words from anyone else. The boy came back every day after that. His name, I finally learned, was Eli. He started talking more while Buddy flopped on the grass beside him. I learned that his grandparents lived in Kentucky and had a big old Labrador named Gus, who drooled like a fountain and barked at mailboxes. Eli liked it there, but he said it wasn't the same without Buddy. I started letting Eli come through the side gate to visit directly. His mom came by one day to thank me. She stood on my porch awkwardly, arms crossed, looking like she wasn't sure what to say. "Thanks for letting him play with your dog," she finally said. "He hasn't really connected with anyone since the divorce. It's been hard." I nodded. Buddy's been through some stuff too. I think they understand each other. Her expression softened, and she left it at that. I think we both understood more than we were willing to say. That fall, Buddy really came alive. His energy picked up. His fur, once coarse and patchy, had grown thick and soft. He learned to nudge the refrigerator when he wanted ice, and he had a favorite blanket he dragged from room to room, like a toddler with a security toy. He still had moments of nervousness, especially around loud voices or strange men, but he bounced back quicker each time. Eli came over more often as the weather cooled. After school, he'd do his homework on my back porch, Buddy lying beside him like a loyal sentry. Sometimes I'd bring out snacks, apple slices or peanut butter crackers, and we'd just sit and talk. Eli had questions about things. Big questions. "Do you think dogs get sad like we do?" he asked one day. I looked at Buddy, who was chewing on a stick like it was his life's purpose. I think they do. Maybe not in the same way, but yeah, they feel things. Do you think Buddy misses his first home? That was a tough one. Maybe, but I think he likes it here. Sometimes what matters isn't where you start, it's where you end up. Eli was quiet for a while, then said, I hope I end up somewhere good too. You will, I told him. You already are. Buddy barked then, just once, as if to agree. Eli grinned. Halloween rolled around, and I had an idea. I bought Buddy a simple costume, just a small black cape with a soft bat emblem on it. He didn't seem to mind it, and Eli thought it was hilarious. He looks like a superhero, he said. He kind of is, I replied. That night, we sat on the porch handing out candy to kids in all sorts of costumes. Buddy sat like a statue, only wagging his tail or giving soft woofs when a child reached out to pet him. One little girl even asked if she could take a picture with him. Eli beamed like a proud brother. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail from a woman named Jennifer, the vet technician from Dr. Lorna's clinic. She said she remembered Buddy and wanted to let me know about a local animal behaviorist who specialized in dogs with trauma histories. I called her the next morning. Dr. Marcy was young, with a calm voice and a pocket full of treats. She came to the house and watched Buddy carefully before speaking. He's very aware, she said, and very cautious. He's learned to watch before reacting, which is a sign he was punished for being too energetic. I told her what I knew about his past, and she nodded. I can help you teach him how to enjoy things again, she said. He's got the will. He just needs the space. The sessions started weekly. Dr. Marcy brought toys and obstacle courses, and Buddy took to some of it quickly. Other things, like loud clickers or sudden movements, set him back. But she worked gently, with patience. I let Eli watch sometimes, and he started helping too. Buddy, sit, he'd say with a hand gesture, and Buddy would slowly lower himself. Good boy, Eli grinned every time. That November, a local dog fair came to town. It was mostly for fun: agility courses, costume contests, food trucks with pup-friendly snacks. Dr. Marcy suggested I bring Buddy. He's ready, she said. Even if he just walks around, it'll be good for him. Eli begged to come along, so the three of us drove out that Saturday. Buddy rode in the back seat, nose pressed to the window. His tail wagged the entire ride. At the fair, he was cautious, but curious. He sniffed other dogs, stayed close to me and Eli, and even let a stranger pat his head. When we passed the agility area, Eli asked if Buddy could try. Just the tunnel, he said. He likes crawling under stuff. I looked at Buddy, then back at the blue tunnel made of soft mesh. You up for it, Bud? I asked. I walked to one end while Eli crouched at the other with a treat. Come on, Buddy, you can do it! Buddy hesitated, then slowly entered the tunnel. Halfway through, he stopped. I held my breath. Eli whispered encouragement. Then Buddy started moving again. When he popped out the other side, his tail was high, and Eli jumped up, cheering. You did it! He shouted, hugging Buddy tight. People clapped nearby, and Buddy looked around with wide eyes. Then he barked twice, wagged his tail, and did a little hop. It was the happiest I'd ever seen him. We stayed at the fair for hours. Buddy tried 3 more obstacles, munched on peanut butter cookies, and even lay on the grass while Eli painted his own paw print canvas. When we drove home, Buddy curled up in the back seat and fell asleep with a snore so loud we both laughed. That night, I wrote a note to myself and stuck it on the fridge. Remember, this is what healing looks like. because it was. The weeks that followed had their ups and downs. One stormy night, Buddy panicked again and scratched at the back door until I let him into the bedroom. He curled up under the bed and didn't move until morning. Another day, a man in a uniform came to fix the water meter, and Buddy barked nonstop, tail down, hackles up. But those moments were fewer. In between them, we had long walks, backyard naps, and lazy evenings watching old movies with Buddy curled between our feet. He stopped flinching when I reached to pet him. He started greeting guests with cautious wags, and once, when Eli scraped his knee tripping on the sidewalk, Buddy rushed to him and licked his face until he laughed through the tears. By winter, Buddy had become more than just a rescue. He was part of the neighborhood. The mailman brought him treats. The kids at the park called his name. Even Mrs. Whitaker started leaving biscuits by her porch railing. I watched all of this with a quiet kind of awe, because a dog who once cried at my door was now the heart of our little street, and we still had more growing to do. By the time December rolled in, Buddy had discovered snow. The first time flakes began falling, he stood on the porch and stared at them like they were magic. He tilted his head, sniffed the cold air, and then cautiously stepped off the steps, pawing at the fresh layer of white on the grass. A few minutes later, he was bounding across the backyard, tail high, leaping like a deer through the thickening blanket. Eli came over that afternoon with his knit hat pulled down over his ears and 2 pairs of gloves. "You think he's ever seen snow before?" he asked. "Not like this," I said, watching Buddy bury his nose in a drift. "He's acting like a puppy again." We spent hours outside that day. Eli rolled snowballs for Buddy to chase. I built a lopsided snowman, and Buddy barked at it until its stick arms fell off. When we finally came inside, Buddy stood by the fireplace and looked at us expectantly. I laid out his blanket in front of the hearth, and he settled down with a tired sigh, paws tucked under his chest. The next few weeks were the coziest I'd ever had. I put up a small tree in the corner of the living room. Buddy didn't bother it much, but every time I added a new ornament, he'd wander over and sniff it like he was supervising. Eli helped me string lights along the fence outside. Mrs. Whitaker gave us a tin of cookies, and Buddy got his own bag of dog treats tied up in a red ribbon. Christmas was quiet. I didn't travel. Eli spent the morning at his mom's, but in the afternoon, he came by with a paper-wrapped box. "It's for Buddy," he said. Inside was a brand-new rope toy, bright green, with a squeaker in the middle. Buddy took it gently, squeaked it once, and then trotted into the laundry room to stash it with his growing collection. "You think he knows it's from me?" Eli asked. "He knows. Trust me." Snow kept falling, week after week. The whole town looked like it had been dipped in frosting. Buddy learned how to make his own paths in the yard, circling the tree and hopping through drifts like it was an obstacle course. One day, I caught him standing absolutely still, watching a squirrel dart from branch to branch. "You'll never catch one," I told him. He looked at me, then back at the squirrel and barked once, as if to say he was still going to try. Then came the surprise in January. I was putting away groceries when my phone rang. It was the local shelter. "We were doing a follow-up on a past case," the woman said. "A neighbor recently reported a dog matching the description of one that had been listed as missing almost a year ago." My heart dropped. "Are you saying Buddy had an owner who filed a report?" "There was a report," she confirmed, "filed by a family upstate. The dog had a distinctive marking, a crescent-shaped patch behind his right ear. He had it, a little curved patch of darker fur, right where she said. We'd like to schedule a visit to verify if it's the same dog." Would that be okay? I said yes, but my stomach turned for the rest of the day. What if they wanted him back? What if all this time, Buddy had been lost, not abandoned? Eli noticed my mood when he came over. "What's wrong?" he asked, watching Buddy chew on his blanket. "There might be someone who's been looking for Buddy," I said. "Someone who filed a report months ago." Eli froze. "You mean they could take him away?" "They might not, but we need to see. If he belonged to someone who loved him, it's only fair." Eli didn't say anything for a long while. Then he looked at Buddy and whispered, "He doesn't want to go back." I didn't either, but I knew we couldn't stop this part. 2 days later, the shelter coordinator arrived with a woman named Susan and her teenage son. The moment they stepped out of the car, Buddy stiffened. He didn't run to them. He didn't wag his tail. He stood by my side, silent and watchful. "Buddy?" the woman called gently. "Is that you?" Buddy's ears twitched. The boy knelt down and held out his hand. "Come on, boy. It's me, Zach, remember?" Buddy stayed still. After a few moments, he took a single step forward, then another. He sniffed the boy's hand, then looked back at me. His tail was low. Not tucked, but not wagging either. Susan looked heartbroken. "We lost him almost a year ago. Our back gate blew open in a storm. We searched for weeks." "He didn't have a chip," I said quietly. "I know. It was stupid of us. We never thought he'd wander far." Zach sat on the porch step. "He was always shy, didn't like fireworks. He used to sleep under the table whenever people came over." "He still does that," I said. The three of us stood in silence for a bit. Then Susan spoke again. "He looks different now, healthier, happier." I nodded. "He's been through a lot. So have we." She gave a soft sigh. "Would it be all right if we just sat with him for a while?" "Of course." They stayed for about half an hour. Buddy let them pet him, but he didn't nuzzle into them the way he did with me or Eli. He didn't try to sit in their laps. Eventually, he walked back to the porch, curled up by the door, and closed his eyes. Susan watched him, then looked at me. "He's made his choice, hasn't he?" I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. They left without asking to take him. The shelter coordinator said they'd close the report. Susan gave me a photo of Buddy from when he was younger. Leaner, shyer, but unmistakably him. "Thank you," she said before leaving, "for giving him a home when he needed it most." After they were gone, Eli asked, "Do you think he remembers them?" "I think he does," I said. "But he remembers what it felt like to be alone, too." Buddy slept soundly that night. No pacing, no whimpers, just a quiet snore from his corner of the living room. Over the next few weeks, something changed in him. He became more confident, more protective. If someone came up the walk, he'd sit by the door until I answered. He started recognizing the sound of Eli's bike and would be waiting at the fence, tail already going. One Saturday, we visited the lake. I'd never taken him before, unsure how he'd handle it. But the moment he saw the water, he ran. He didn't dive in like a retriever, but he padded along the edge, splashing, biting at ripples and barking at ducks that were far out of reach. Eli and I sat on a fallen log and watched him. "He's not afraid of much anymore," Eli said. "Nope," I said. "He's figuring it out." Buddy bounded over, soaked and grinning, and shook water all over us. Eli laughed so hard he fell off the log. That night, I dried Buddy off and combed out his wet fur. He lay still the whole time, tail thumping every few strokes. It was a simple thing, but it felt like something we'd earned. February brought a cold snap. Ice clung to the trees and sidewalks glistened like glass. I kept the fireplace going most nights, and Buddy slept nearby with his head on Eli's old sweatshirt. On weekends, we stayed in and watched movies. Buddy had developed a strange fondness for nature documentaries. Whenever a bear or wolf howled on screen, he'd perk up and tilt his head like he was trying to figure it out. One day, I caught Eli reading aloud from a school book while Buddy sat in front of him, tail flicking like a metronome. When I asked what he was doing, Eli said, "Practicing for class. But he likes it. He doesn't judge if I mess up." Buddy gave a small sneeze in reply. As the days got longer and the sun returned, the three of us spent more time outside again. I started a new patch in the garden. Buddy dug a hole in the exact spot I'd just planted a row of carrots, and I couldn't even be mad. He looked so proud. That spring was something special. Not because of anything big or dramatic, but because of all the small things. Buddy chasing bees, Eli lying in the grass reading, and me realizing that my world, once so quiet and empty, had filled up without me noticing. And we were still just getting started. The first warm rain of spring came on a Sunday afternoon. The kind of gentle drizzle that made everything smell like earth and new beginnings. I left the screen door open and let the breeze in. Buddy was lying halfway out the doorway, nose just beyond the threshold, letting the rain speckle his fur. He didn't flinch or pull back. He just stayed there, quiet and content. I sat on the porch with a book, though I hardly turned a page. Watching Buddy had become a kind of meditation. He wasn't a dog who demanded attention. He asked for it softly, with a glance or a nudge, never loud. And that made every small gesture from him feel like something bigger. When Eli arrived a little before 4, Buddy didn't even wait. He ran to the gate before the latch clicked, tail already swinging like a metronome set to joy. Eli came in soaked, wearing a thin raincoat and wet sneakers. "You should have called. I could have picked you up," I said. He shrugged, brushing water from his hair. Didn't want to miss Buddy's rain face. I blinked. His what? You know, the face he makes when the rain hits his ears. That squinty thing. He loves it. I chuckled. "You're making things up." "Am not." Eli plopped down beside Buddy and scratched behind his ears. He gets this look like he's remembering something from a past life. That evening, I made grilled cheese and tomato soup. Eli insisted on making Buddy his own version. Plain toast with some mashed sweet potato and a bit of shredded chicken. Buddy sat patiently between us as we ate, not begging, just keeping us company. I think he liked hearing us talk, even if he didn't understand most of it. After dinner, Eli pulled a folded piece of paper from his backpack. "I'm supposed to write about a hero," he said. "For class, a real one, not someone from movies." "Who'd you pick?" I asked. Eli unfolded the page and held it up. At the top, in block letters, it read, "My hero, Buddy." I felt my chest tighten. "Can I read it?" He nodded, but added, "It's not done yet." Even so, I read what he had. "My hero is not a person. He's a dog. His name is Buddy. He used to be scared and quiet, but he learned how to be brave. He doesn't wear a cape or fight bad guys, but he helped me when I felt alone. He doesn't care if I mess up at school or say the wrong thing. He just stays beside me. When I grow up, I want to be like him. I want to make people feel safe just by being there." I handed it back gently. "That's one of the best things I've ever read." Eli looked down. "I don't know how to end it, though." "You don't have to yet," I said. Sometimes the best stories take their time. Buddy yawned, curled up against Eli's side, and closed his eyes. A week later, the town held its annual spring fair in the park. Booths went up overnight. Food vendors, handmade goods, a small stage for local musicians. They also had a pet showcase, not a competition, just a place where people could share stories about their animals. Dr. Marcy called and asked if we'd be part of it. "Not for tricks or anything," she said. "Just to share Buddy's journey. People need to hear stories like his." Eli was excited. He helped design a little display board with photos and captions like Day 1, The Porch, and First Toy Fetch, and Rain Face. We even printed out his school essay, now completed, and clipped it to the board. Buddy's name was on the top in big red letters. The day of the fair, we arrived early. Buddy wore his green rope toy like a badge, dragging it around like it was part of his outfit. Eli wore a shirt with paw prints on it and carried a tote bag full of supplies. At the booth, people came and went. Some asked about Buddy's breed. Others asked about his story. Eli told them everything. About how he showed up at the door, about his limp, the first bark, the tunnel at the dog fair. Buddy stayed close, letting strangers pet him, sniffing babies in strollers, and occasionally sneaking a bite of whatever Eli dropped from his funnel cake. When a little girl reached out shyly and asked, "Is he magic?" Buddy licked her fingers, and she squealed with delight. "He kind of is," Eli said. Toward the end of the day, a man with a service dog vest approached. He was older, with deep lines on his face and a calm presence. His golden retriever walked beside him with purpose. "I heard about your buddy," he said, extending a hand. "Name's Ray." I shook it. "Nice to meet you." Ray looked at Buddy and then at me. "You ever think about training him?" "Training?" "As a therapy dog. Doesn't have to be complicated. But dogs like him, they can change lives." I looked at Buddy, who was lying on his side in the grass, Eli rubbing his belly. "He already has." Ray smiled. "Might be worth sharing him with more people. There are kids at the hospital who'd love a visit from a friend like that." We talked more, exchanged numbers. Ray offered to introduce us to someone from the local children's hospital. It wasn't a commitment, just an opportunity, but it stuck with me. That night I sat on the porch while Buddy chased moths under the light. I thought about what it would mean. Could he handle it? Would it be too much? But then I remembered how he looked when Eli was sad. How he didn't just sit nearby. He leaned in. He stayed. Like he knew. The next day I brought it up to Eli. "You think Buddy would want to visit other kids?" I asked. Eli nodded immediately. "If it helps, yeah. He'd know what to do." Ray helped us set up an orientation. It was gentle, no pressure. We visited the hospital together. Me, Buddy, and Eli. The staff was warm. The halls were quiet. In a small room with a few chairs and soft rugs, Buddy was introduced to a group of kids in recovery. Some were quiet. One girl had a shaved head and held a stuffed animal to her chest. A boy with a leg cast waved shyly. Buddy sat by the door at first, watching. Then he moved, slowly, one paw at a time. He sniffed the air, looked at each child, and walked over to the boy with the cast. He sat beside him, just close enough to touch. The boy reached out, fingers brushing his fur. Buddy stayed. Then came the moment I'll never forget. The girl with the stuffed animal got up, walked over, and sat beside Buddy without saying a word. He turned his head, licked her hand, and lowered himself into her lap. She didn't cry. She just held on to him. I looked at the nurse, who mouthed, "She hasn't spoken all week." We visited twice more that month. Each time, Buddy seemed to know exactly where to go. Sometimes he didn't even need to do anything. Just being there was enough. Kids would rest their heads on him, run their fingers through his fur, or quietly talk to him about whatever was on their mind. Buddy never looked overwhelmed. He never backed away. Later, when we walked out of the hospital after one visit, Eli looked up and said, "Told you, he's magic." I couldn't disagree. Buddy got his official therapy dog badge the next month. Nothing fancy, just a little tag and a certificate. But it felt big. Bigger than anything we'd imagined when he showed up at my door that first night, scared and shaking. He still chased squirrels. He still rolled in the grass and snuck toast crusts when I wasn't looking. But now he had a place in the world that went beyond our backyard, beyond our porch. He had a purpose. And somehow, in helping him find it, I'd found something too. But we weren't done. Not by a long shot. Because as much as Buddy had given to me, and to Eli, and now to the children he visited, the world still had more waiting for him. We just didn't know it yet. Spring turned to early summer, with barely a whisper. The grass came in thicker than the year before, and Buddy took full advantage, rolling in fresh patches of green like it was his own spa treatment. His energy surged with the longer days. He started waking up earlier, tail wagging at the bedroom door before the sun even touched the windows. Most mornings, I'd find him sitting upright at the fence, eyes fixed toward Eli's house, like a soldier waiting for a familiar flag to rise. Eli had started his summer break, and with it came long, wandering days. He showed up mid-morning almost every day, sometimes with nothing more than a pack of crackers and a head full of ideas. He and Buddy became inseparable. They built obstacle courses in the backyard using chairs and broomsticks, practiced mock search missions with tennis balls buried in flower beds, and hosted imaginary TV shows where Eli interviewed Buddy as the world's most interesting dog. "Tell me, Buddy," Eli would say in a deep, theatrical voice, "what inspired you to chase your first squirrel?" Buddy would bark once, and Eli would nod seriously. "Ah, the call of the wild, of course." It was joy, pure and undiluted. One morning, Eli burst in with a folded flyer in his hand. "There's a summer camp happening 2 towns over," he said. "It's for kids and therapy dogs. You learn together, like how to help people and stuff. It's only for a few weekends. Can we go?" I skimmed the flyer. It was run by a local nonprofit that paired kids and animals for confidence building and emotional growth. Parents or guardians could participate too. I looked at Buddy, who was watching us both with his head tilted slightly to the side. "We'll have to apply," I said. "They probably don't just let anybody in." "I wrote our names on the interest form already," Eli said, grinning. "You just have to sign it." That was how we ended up spending every other Saturday at a converted horse ranch, surrounded by kids, dogs, and acres of open fields. The sessions included basic obedience work, empathy activities, and group challenges that required both the kids and dogs to work together. Buddy took to it like he'd been training for it all his life. He helped a girl with anxiety cross a rope bridge, her hand resting on his back the entire way. He learned to retrieve specific items by name. He even posed for a group photo with a sun hat on, sitting perfectly still while the other dogs wriggled out of their outfits. Eli became a junior mentor by the 3rd week. He helped younger kids learn how to approach animals safely, always starting with, "Let them smell your hand first." Like this. One boy named Mason followed him everywhere. Mason was quiet, maybe 6 or 7, and had a stutter that made him nervous to speak up in group sessions. But when he was near Buddy, the words came easier. "He's good," Mason would say, petting Buddy's back. "He Likes me." "He really does," Eli would reply. "You're his friend now." Watching those moments felt like watching something sacred. Halfway through the camp, the director pulled me aside. "Your dog," she said, "has changed some of these kids already. Not all of them smile on the first day. Mason hadn't spoken at all his first week here last year. But now?" She paused. "Now he's reading books to Buddy. Full sentences." I swallowed a lump in my throat. I guess he just knows what people need. He absolutely does. Has he always been this way? I looked out across the field, where Buddy and Eli were racing side by side through cones. "No," I said. He was scared, hurt, but he wanted to heal, and now he helps others do the same. Each weekend at the camp ended with a quiet walk through the nearby woods. Kids were encouraged to talk about anything they wanted: fears, dreams, stories. Eli liked to talk about the future. "I think I want to work with animals when I grow up," he said one afternoon. "Not like a vet, more like this. Helping kids, helping dogs. I didn't think about it before Buddy." Buddy padded beside him, ears twitching as he sniffed the path. "You'd be good at it," I said. "You think he'll still be around then?" "I hope so. But even if he's not, he'll be part of whatever you do, just like he's part of this now." Eli looked up. "He makes things feel less scary." "He does that for me too." That night, back home, Buddy lay beside my chair while I wrote emails. I looked down at him, and he looked back, quiet and certain. There was no noise, no special trick, just presence. Steady, comforting presence. The camp ended with a small ceremony and a certificate presentation. Each kid got a ribbon and a little booklet of photos. Eli's had one of him and Buddy on every page. The final image was the two of them under the big oak tree at the edge of the ranch, Buddy's head resting on Eli's knee, both of them staring off at something only they could see. Summer heat came in full force after that. Most days, we stayed close to home. I filled a kiddie pool in the backyard, and Buddy loved it, pawing the water and laying belly deep in it while Eli splashed beside him. On one particularly hot afternoon, they built a pup fort out of lawn chairs and beach towels. I watched from the porch, sipping iced tea, marveling at how something so simple could feel so much like magic. Then one morning in mid-July, Buddy didn't get up. He wasn't sick, not really. Just still, calm, like he'd decided he needed a slower day. I sat beside him and felt his nose, checked his paws, his breathing. Everything normal, but slower. Eli arrived not long after and immediately dropped to his knees. "Buddy," he whispered. Buddy lifted his head, gave a soft wag of his tail, and licked Eli's hand. Then he placed his head back down and closed his eyes again. "He's okay," I said. "Just tired, maybe." We kept the day quiet. Eli read to him on the porch. I brushed out his coat. He stayed close but didn't move much. He still came to the kitchen when he heard food, still nudged the door when he needed to go out. But he wasn't his usual bouncy self. Dr. Lorna made a house call the next day just to be safe. "He's fine," she said after her exam. "Older than we guessed, maybe, but healthy. Sometimes they just have slow days like we do." Eli let out a breath. "So he's not, sick?" "Not at all, but he's earned his naps." That evening, Buddy followed Eli out to the garden and lay in the shade while Eli talked about camp and Mason and everything he wanted to do next summer. Buddy listened, tail occasionally tapping the grass. "You think he knows what I'm saying?" "I think he listens because he knows it matters to you." Eli leaned back on his elbows. "He always listens, even when I'm quiet." The sun dipped low, and painted the sky with orange streaks. Buddy lifted his head, looked around the yard, and then laid it gently on Eli's leg. "He's perfect," Eli said softly. I couldn't argue. Not now. Not ever. A few days later, we got a call from Ray, the service dog trainer. "I've been putting together a small group," he said. "Older dogs, mostly retired, but we visit nursing homes once a week. Thought Buddy might want to join. Just visits. No pressure." I asked Eli what he thought. "Old people like Buddy too? They love him," I said, "sometimes more than anyone else." "Then yeah, let's do it." So we went. Once a week, every Tuesday morning. We'd stop by the local assisted living center where Buddy would make the rounds like a small-town mayor. He had a way with the residents. He let them pet him without rushing. He stayed close without getting too excited. One man, Mr. Harlan, cried the first time he saw Buddy. "My dog looked just like this," he said. "I had him in the war. Slept beside me every night." Buddy sat next to his chair the entire visit, head on the man's slippered foot. I watched from across the room and thought of how far we'd come. A dog that once cried for help, now comforting a man with nothing but a heartbeat and silence. And there was still more ahead. Because somehow, Buddy had become more than a rescue. He was the rhythm of our days. And that rhythm had no sign of stopping yet. The summer deepened, and so did Buddy's bond with the neighborhood. He had become a fixture, the kind of presence that people quietly rely on without even realizing it. Each morning, I'd find a new treat or toy tucked against the gate, left by someone who'd passed by and thought of him. Once, there was a small bag of homemade biscuits with a note that said, "For the dog who healed our street." It was strange, in a way, to think back to when Buddy was just a limping figure on my porch, trembling and lost. Now, he walked tall. He moved with a soft confidence, alert but calm, his tail a steady pendulum of contentment. Kids waved to him as they rode bikes past the house. Even the grumpiest neighbor, Mr. Henley, who used to complain about every dog on the block, gave Buddy a respectful nod whenever they passed each other on the sidewalk. Eli had picked up an old Polaroid camera at a garage sale and started taking pictures of Buddy everywhere they went. He tacked them to a corkboard in the den. Buddy under the oak tree, Buddy in the pool, Buddy sleeping upside down on the couch with his mouth wide open. "He's gonna be famous," Eli joked. "He already is," I said. In August, Buddy's visits to the children's hospital and nursing home became part of our routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays were his official therapy days, and he seemed to know what they meant. On those mornings, he'd wait patiently by the door as I gathered his leash, vest, and ID badge. He carried himself with a quiet dignity during those visits, adjusting his energy to the room without being told. With the kids, he'd lay low and lick their hands. With the older residents, he'd sit close and let them stroke his fur in silence. One afternoon at the hospital, we met a boy named Caleb. He was 9, recovering from a surgery that had left him tired and withdrawn. His mother told us that he hadn't spoken more than a few words in days. Buddy walked in, took one look at Caleb, and calmly climbed onto the foot of his hospital bed. Caleb flinched at first, but Buddy didn't move. He just curled up and waited. A few minutes passed, then Caleb reached out and placed a hand on Buddy's back. "He's warm," Caleb whispered. His mother gasped. We stayed for over an hour. Caleb talked about his favorite movie and asked if Buddy liked superheroes. By the end, he was giggling as Buddy chased a plush toy around the bed. Driving home that day, Eli stared out the window. "I think Buddy was meant for this," he said. I nodded. "Yeah, meant to help people. I wish I could be like that." You already are. The next weekend brought an unexpected invitation. A woman named Karen, who ran a camp for grieving families, called after hearing about Buddy's work. She wanted to know if we'd consider joining a one-day retreat for kids who had recently lost a parent or sibling. It's a quiet event, she explained. We don't push, but having dogs around helps. A lot. Eli was immediately on board. Buddy's good at quiet, he said. So we went. The retreat was held at a lakeside cabin about an hour away, tucked among tall trees and ringed by soft trails. Families gathered in small circles on blankets. There were crafts, storytelling corners, and shaded areas where therapy animals roamed freely. Buddy moved slowly at first, taking it all in. Then, as if pulled by instinct, he walked over to a girl sitting by herself beneath a maple tree. She had her knees pulled to her chest and her chin resting on them. Buddy approached, stopped a few feet away, and laid down. He didn't try to engage her. He just waited. Minutes passed. Then her shoulders relaxed. She leaned forward and touched his fur. He's soft, she said, not looking up. Eli sat beside her. His name's Buddy. He listens better than people. She nodded, never taking her eyes off Buddy. I miss my dad. Eli didn't speak. Buddy shifted, inching closer until his head rested gently on her foot. That's all it took. The rest of the day passed in moments like that. Buddy wandered from blanket to blanket, sitting when needed, offering his presence like a kind of silent assurance. He didn't ask for anything, just gave. When we left, Karen thanked us with tears in her eyes. There's something about him, she said. Like he knows. Back home, I looked through Eli's growing wall of photos. I decided to make a book, something real, something we could hold on to. I scanned the photos, added captions, and left space for more. The title we chose together was simple: The Dog Who Listens. Buddy's world kept expanding, so did ours. Eli made new friends from camp and started organizing little meetups in the park. Buddy was always the main attraction. He even got his own birthday party, though we didn't know the real date. Eli picked one, September 1st. We'll celebrate the day he found us, he said. We invited everyone, neighbors, the kids from therapy sessions, even Ray and Dr. Marcy. There were homemade treats, a tiny dog cake, and a bandana that said "Birthday Boy." Buddy trotted through the crowd like a king, tail high, accepting hugs, pats, and an embarrassing number of biscuits. That night, after the last guest had gone home and Eli had fallen asleep on the couch, Buddy curled up beside me on the porch. We watched fireflies blink across the lawn. You know, I said, I think you're the best thing that's ever happened to this street. He looked up at me, gave one soft bark, and laid his head back down. September gave way to October, and the air grew crisp again. Leaves turned gold and rust. Buddy rediscovered his love for rustling piles of fallen leaves, scattering them like a toddler. Eli helped me decorate for Halloween, and this time, Buddy got a full costume. A tiny lion's mane that fit snugly around his head. He looks regal, Eli said. He looks annoyed, I replied. Buddy growled once, low and playful, and then licked Eli's face. The trick-or-treaters came in waves that night, and Buddy greeted every group from the porch. Some kids remembered him from the year before. One even brought him a treat bag. For Buddy, she said proudly. In the weeks that followed, I started taking more walks without a destination. Just Buddy and me, moving through the neighborhood, saying hello. We met new people. I found myself talking more, sharing more. It wasn't just Buddy who had grown. It was me too. Eli's mother stopped by one evening with a plate of baked apples and a hesitant smile. "He's doing better," she said, nodding toward Eli. "More focused. Calmer. I think a lot of it's because of your dog." "Buddy belongs to all of us," I said. "He still asks to come here every day. Says this is where he feels most like himself." I smiled. "Then he's always welcome." She looked at Buddy, who was curled beside the fire. "I used to think dogs were just pets. I didn't get it. But now I do." There wasn't much more to say. That weekend, Eli and I sat in the backyard while Buddy chased the last bees of the season. "You think he knows how much he's done?" Eli asked. "Maybe. Or maybe he just knows he's home." Eli looked thoughtful. "Home's not just a place. It's a feeling." "Exactly." We watched as Buddy dropped into the grass, rolled onto his back, and kicked his legs in the air. "He's ridiculous," I said. "He's perfect," Eli replied. And there was still more to come. Because Buddy wasn't finished teaching us what it meant to care, to listen, to be present. He was just getting started. The last leaves fell slowly that year, drifting down in soft spirals as Buddy padded through the yard like he was walking through golden confetti. It was November now, and the town had begun its quiet shift toward winter. The porch had grown cooler in the mornings, and Buddy had taken to sitting with his chest puffed out and his breath rising in clouds, as though he was watching over something only he could see. Eli's school routine returned, but the bond between him and Buddy never faded. Each afternoon, Buddy would lie by the front door 10 minutes before the bus arrived, then leap up the second he heard the brakes hiss down the road. Eli's footsteps always ended in a sprint, his backpack thudding to the floor as he threw himself down beside Buddy with stories to tell. Buddy never missed a word. He watched, he listened, and when Eli needed it, he simply leaned into him like a friend who knew what quiet comfort meant. Thanksgiving came with extra plates and even more guests than the year before. I hosted this time neighbors, Dr. Marcy, Ray from the service dog group, and even a few families from the hospital. Buddy moved between them all, collecting pets, praise, and little morsels slipped discreetly beneath the table. When Eli stood up to say grace, he added something that made every adult in the room stop. "And thank you for the day Buddy knocked on our door, and for everything he's done since." There wasn't a dry eye in the room, not even mine. Later that evening, as the house quieted and everyone drifted home, Buddy climbed up onto the couch, curled in his usual spot, and rested his chin on Eli's knee. I looked at the two of them and thought about all the ways life had shifted since that night on the porch. The boy who once carried the weight of his home on his shoulders now laughed freely without looking over them. The dog who'd once come trembling out of the dark now stood at the center of something strong and safe. And me? I'd stopped counting the years I'd spent alone. I'd started looking forward to mornings, to footsteps across the floor, to the way Buddy watched me like I was still worth being near. December came quietly. Snow teased the rooftops, but never stayed long. Eli hung ornaments with care, and Buddy supervised from his usual spot by the fireplace. One morning, we woke to find someone had left a tiny wreath on the gate, woven with twine and topped with a single paw-shaped charm. There was no note, just the symbol, and somehow that felt like enough. The therapy visits continued. Buddy had his routine, and the nurses greeted him like a coworker. In the halls of the hospital, he moved with the grace of someone who had finally found his purpose. He still paused at every elevator, still sniffed every waiting room like it was new. But now he walked in like he belonged. The kids knew him by name. So did their parents. One afternoon, we met a boy named Thomas, who had been through more surgeries than any child should have to endure. He didn't speak. He barely looked up. But Buddy didn't mind. He climbed onto the bed slowly, curled beside Thomas's legs, and lay completely still. An hour later, the boy whispered something. Not a full sentence, just a name. Buddy. His mother wept. At home, Buddy rested more, not out of illness, just age. There was a slowness in his steps now, especially in the mornings. He stretched longer, took his time standing. But his eyes still lit up when Eli arrived. He still brought toys, still greeted the mail carrier with a tail wag, still lay by the porch swing with ears alert whenever we sat outside. One evening, as we watched the fire crackle, Eli asked a question I'd been expecting. Will he be with us forever? I thought carefully. Not forever the way we want, but forever in every way that matters. Eli nodded slowly. I'm scared of when he's not. So am I, but I'm more grateful for every single day we do get. Buddy lifted his head at the sound of our voices, yawned, and pressed himself closer between us. The first real snow came on the second week of December. A quiet blanket covering the lawn and street in soft white. Buddy stepped outside, sniffed the air, and made one slow, joyful circle around the yard. He rolled once in a snowbank, then shook off the flakes and sat at the center of the yard, looking toward the woods like he was remembering. Eli grabbed the camera and took a picture. That one's going on the cover of the second book, he said. You're making another one? Yeah, it's called Buddy's Places. I want to show everywhere he's helped people. It's not done yet. I smiled. That's because his story isn't over. But a few days later, something changed. It started small. He didn't finish his breakfast. Then he skipped the stairs and stayed curled on his bed. He didn't limp, didn't cry. He just stayed still. Quiet. We brought him to Dr. Lorna. She examined him slowly, kindly, then looked at us with the sort of softness that told us more than words could. He's tired, she said. His heart's strong, but his body's slowing. He's not in pain. He just needs rest. Gentle days. Familiar things. Eli nodded, holding Buddy's leash with both hands. Can we keep doing our visits? If he's up to it, let him guide you. He'll let you know. So we did. We shortened the visits, stayed closer to home. We built a nest of blankets near the fire and moved his food and water to a spot that didn't require stairs. Eli read to him every night. I brushed his fur more often. We sat together, sometimes saying nothing for hours. On Christmas morning, Buddy woke up slow, but alert. He ate a few bites of turkey, accepted every gift with polite sniffs, and curled up under the tree while we opened ours. One of Eli's gifts was a framed photo of the three of us, taken at the retreat by the lake. Behind us, the water glittered. Buddy had his paw resting on Eli's hand. Eli held the frame tight. This is the one I'll always keep. The next few days were soft and quiet. Buddy stayed close. His steps were slower, his naps longer, but he still wagged his tail when Eli came in. He still perked up when I sat beside him. He still pressed his nose into our palms, gently, like he was reminding us he was there. On the last morning of the year, I woke to silence. Buddy lay curled on his bed, still and peaceful. His breathing was shallow, but steady. His eyes opened slowly when I sat beside him. Eli joined me moments later, crouching down without a word. We stayed like that for hours. And sometime that afternoon, Buddy slipped into sleep. His last breath was quiet. There was no struggle, just peace. A stillness that settled into the room like a sigh. Eli cried against his shoulder. I wrapped them both in my arms. We stayed that way for a long time. When the sun set, we lit a candle and placed it beside the framed photo. Outside, snow was falling again, silent and steady. The porch was empty for the first time in years. But the house was full of stories, full of warmth, full of Buddy. And even as the new year began, we knew nothing had truly ended, because a dog who knocked on a door in the middle of the night had done more than ask for help. He'd become the answer to a question we hadn't known we were asking. He healed a house. He held a boy together. He reminded us what love looks like when it doesn't need to say a word. And even now, without him curled at our feet, we still feel it. Always.